already know what's going on here. And what's going on, we getting bigger and bigger, we getting better and better, and we are shitting, and I mean shitting and turds on any and everybody who said we aren't who we are. Before we get started with this episode, I want to apologize for the late airing. I know it was to air at 10 o'clock sharp tonight. Some things happened, some things came in the way of that. But I'm here, I'm back, and I'm better and I'm ready. You know, in this episode, we're getting into something a little, we're getting into something, something a little more lighter than what we've been in the previous episodes. I want to go back to m- my past, my childhood and everything like that. So we got 5K through middle school. You know, before I get started and before I get in this episode, I want to tell you how to stream bigger. Stream Ain't No Lover Boy FR. Keep getting into Mason Jyree because we are getting bigger and bigger in the Lions Den. We're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And like I said, I do want to apologize once again for the late airing of episode 5. Y'all got to tune in with me Monday morning at 10:30 a.m. I'm so sorry, but I'm so happy for this series. I'm not gonna lie, I'm so happy for this series. Y'all gotta make sure y'all tune in with me Monday morning at 10:30 a.m. for episode 6, and we're gonna talk about my schooling years from my high school experience, and then we're gonna go into college, and then we're gonna go into some different things, different things. So middle school, 5K through middle school, things were very chill. You know what I mean? I'm gonna be honest. At 5K, I always was a sweet kid. I always was a chill kid. I never was really, disrespectful or anything like that. You know, um, so 5K was great for me. Um, I'm from a small town, Clinton, South Carolina. So the 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 school I went to, wasn't that big. It was nothing too fancy. You know what I mean? To me, growing up, life was normal, but I always felt like something was different about it. And I've always felt like something was different. About it. I remember like in that time frame being in talent shows and doing certain stuff like that. I remember it had to have been about like second grade. It had to be about like second grade. I was in a talent show at my school, Clinton Elementary, and I performed. I was dancing, and I remember I did John Legend Green Light. That was my first time ever being on stage. I wasn't really a dancer even as a kid, and I remember my mama. She was telling me as we were practicing, she was like, "Mason, you got to dance. Like you got to." She's like, "You can't just be up here standing around." And that was the first time I ever like really experienced, like spotlight or, and see the thing is that like I was shy to it. Like as a kid, I just knew people were enamored by me, but I didn't know what it meant, I just knew I felt good when I was up there at peace, not really seeking the audience validation, but I really feel like that was what I was meant to do, if I'm being honest. So really good ish, Um, that was, just fundamental. I did a lot of like church competitions and stuff. And I remember it was one competition that I did and I got second place. And I remember in my head, I was like, second place, the fuck? But like as a kid, I was so humble. I'm still humble now, but as a kid, I was so humble and meek. But in my head, I was like, second place. Oh, And I can't remember if I acted up about that or what. I can't remember if I really, because I might have acted up. I can't really remember. But so yeah, that was like, second, uh, really from what I can remember for real, like from like 5K to second grade, I didn't really do too many creative things. I know in third grade to fifth grade, I didn't really do anything creative. I remember I sung in church a lot during, throughout this time. It was nothing major, and I did grow up in the church heavily. So I did sing a lot in church. I was in a lot of church skits, and just chill stuff like that. I hadn't really done too many things as far as like exposure or I always knew I was talented, but I remember as a kid I always like didn't want to do too much. I always didn't want to like, and I think that's a problem. I was born to do too much, not in a too much what's the word? What's the way like in an overbearing way, but I was born to do too much, because some people they do too much and it's like but me just living and doing how me being myself is just it. So I always felt like I didn't want to do too much. It was a lot of kids around me growing up who could sing, a lot of other kids, and I just felt like I didn't want to I don't know. I didn't want to put myself in that competition, and I also didn't have the support. Like I remember, my mother would tell me, she'd be like, I can sing or whatever, but she didn't have the money to put me in certain places or anything like that. So that was that. I spent a lot of my childhood in poverty, broke, but I always had talent. I always had talent, and I was always, you know, doing what, unbeknownst to me, I was always doing what I was supposed to be doing. If I'm being, for real, because just looking back on my life is like, yeah, I wasn't doing a lot of creative things at that time, but it was the training ground. It's like I can remember as a kid, like I've always been intelligent. I've always been smart. Like I've always been very, very intelligent, and I've always been in my head. So I remember, like I said, I didn't want to. It's weird because it's like I just vividly remember not wanting to do too much. I vividly remember not wanting to like do too much. I didn't want, because growing up, my mom would always tell me, like I was talking about my dreams and stuff. She'd be like, Mason, it's not gonna happen. Stop, hang it up, flat screen. Like my mama was my biggest hater. I'm being honest. Uh, she would always like, try to dim my light. Mason, calm down. Mason, stop. Mason, this. Mason, that. So, I, that's really that. I didn't really have a lot of opportunities. And I think growing up in poverty, she grew up in poverty. I don't take it personal. I just think she limited herself because of what she knew, and just stuff like that. So I did what I could, as far as just everyday life, going, working in the all those different little things. They say, from what I see from the archetypes of life, every superstar has that core church development. We all have that core church development. So like it's in me, it's ingrained within me. You know, um, that's really honestly where it all started. That's where I got my first, opportunities to like speak, do poems, all that good. Y'all know how on Sunday morning on Easter they give you this little speech, all those different little type of things. Uh, so I was, big on that, very, very, very big on that. One thing I could say, like back to like my childhood, is like it always felt like I was living in a bubble. I don't know why. It always felt like I was like I'm living, but like like on the movies where it's like the narrator. I've always had a narrator. I've always been a narrator of my life ever since a kid. Like it just always gave main character energy for Mason Jyree, But it's like I remember like not wanting to do too much. That's something I avidly remember not wanting to do. Is like I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable because I know me being myself, me shining my light, me really quote unquote, getting bigger and bigger and shitting on them like we're doing, it was gonna make people uncomfortable. And like as I got older, I got over that, and I still am. But like that's something I remember avidly doing, and I think that kind of like limited me in the early ages of my childhood. Because Mason Jyree, I wanted to be on Disney Channel. I wanted to be it's Mason Jyree, and you're watching Disney Channel. Like I swear, like um, I remember like like why I just knew I should have always been further than where I was at, even as a kid. I knew my mama should have. Because if the roles were switching, if she was my child and I was her parent, I would have went broke making sure she could make it to where she wanted to go. But she didn't do that for me. It's like she had a disregard for my shit. Excuse me for cursing, but it's like, yeah, time will show her, but she had a disregard for my shit, and I don't appreciate that at all. Even as a child, it's like I've had to work so many like, and I don't care, so much harder than any of my peers in in doing what I'm doing, because I come from nothing. So but it's like I wanted to be not a child star, but I wanted to have foundational, you have my foundation and my skills set early. I didn't want to be the biggest, but I wanted to have my fair share. I wanted to have my spot. But I'm thankful because I feel like if that would have happened, um, they probably would have took everything from me. I would be broke right now. So I'm grateful that my success is going the way that it's going. I remember like wanting to go to like acting schools in New York. It's just like every opportunity that I wanted for myself, my mama shitted on that. She did. She did. And it's just an honest truth, And I'm gonna be honest on this episode and be honest. That's what this whole series is about. Me being honest with my truth and me being honest and real. Because Mason Jyree, I don't tell lies, I don't tell fluff, and I don't tell bullshit. You know, I don't tell lies, I don't tell fluff, and I don't tell bullshit at all. So that's that. Yeah, growing up, um, not really having anything. I can say I come from a musical family. I come from one of those families where they just burst out singing and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, my mother, if you let the people tell you, she can tear the house down, quote. She's one of the best. Da, 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 da. But I'm eating her up like they ate on my D, like I said, in bigger, for real, you know? Um, and I don't know, everything just makes sense. Everything just makes sense. And I just want mm, the people to know that like I grew into who I'm becoming, you know? I want my lions to know that I'm growing into who I'm becoming. You know, this isn't just, bibbidi bobbidi boo. And the reason I say that is because, like, I think the power or the creativity has always been internal within me. I think my power, my creativity, my drive, my passion, my je ne sais quoi has always been within me, and I've always known that ever since a child. But I think like I'm just now unleashing it, and it's cool, you know, because I've always been creative. I've always been doing what I've been doing, you know. And as we get into episode 6, where we talk about my high school years, that's when things get a little bit juicy, you know. That's when things get a little bit juicy and everything like that. Then we get into my college experience in episode 7. And episode 8, we get into some, you know, deeper things, you know, because this whole series is about me just, you know, being real, accepting my truth, and really just doing what I'm doing. Keeping it sexy, keeping it hot, because I'm eating them up like they ate on my D. You know, it's not really much I really, you know, want to say about as far as my childhood, my past, you know, as far as just that time in my life, you know, it was pleasant, you know. It was okay. It was pleasant. You know, we moved cities. Things did get a little bit weird. Things weird for me personally once I got in middle school, you know, because with the things, you know, me growing up black uh, at that time didn't know it, but gay, queer in the country, people wasn't, you know, my family was weird, you know what I'm saying? So like middle school, me feeling those feelings for how, you know, how I was feeling about the same gender and stuff, that was a whole new world, a whole new thing that my family, you know. So we're gonna get into that. Um, you know, because as a kid, you know, besides the things that happened to me, like we talked about in the last episode and stuff like that, I was a good kid. I was polite. I was good. I was respectable. I did kid stuff. You know how kids was hunching? I was never hunching. Mm-mm. Besides when I got hunched on, you know, but we're not going to talk about that because that was episode 4. Um, 4 or 5. You are what number are we on? Yeah. Um, so that's that. And y'all do not forget, keep streaming bigger, keep streaming Ain't No Lover Boy FR. If you're new to the Lions Den, welcome, welcome, welcome. Keep streaming bigger, keep streaming Ain't No Lover Boy FR, because we are doing what? We're getting bigger and bigger. Okay, so yeah. So that's really just that, you know. When I was a kid, I did kid shit. I did kid stuff, you know. So the sexuality, I always knew I might have, you know, certain things happened at that time, you know, a little, you know. Let me not gonna lie, around that story that I told y'all in the last episode, as far as me being touched on, that did happen. That did happen throughout, you know, the years of what I'm talking about now. 5K to, you know, to elementary school. So yeah, you know, but other than that, it was an okay time. 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 You know, it was the precious memories of where my fundamental, you know, musical journey started. I'm really ready for the next episode where we talk about my middle school years. We cannot forget, and I cannot forget to talk about, like, I'm not just your average black man. I'm a queer black man, and I'm a more masculine queer black man. So that adds, you know, perspective onto everything. You know what I mean? It adds perspective onto everything. So it makes a lot of a difference, you know, versus somebody else's story. Um, yeah, you know, I want y'all to make sure that you're keeping it sexy, you're keeping it hot, you're doing exactly what you need to be doing so that you're succeeding. Because if you're watching me, you need to be growing with me. So that is that. Make sure y'all stay tuned for the next episode, Monday morning, episode 6. We're going to talk about my schooling years, middle school. We're going to get into juicy things, you know, just, you know, me experimenting with certain things, you know, just different things, me coming into myself, my middle school years, all those good things. Then we're going to get into high school, talk about some high school things, you know, some things. High school, I got a little frisky, you know, and even, let me be honest, you know, just for the future episodes, you know, in middle school, I was getting a little chunky. You know, in high school, I was chunky, but I had the, I mean, you know, I was getting them, you know, I was getting them. So it really didn't make a difference anyway, you know, but I want to see y'all, and I'm going to see y'all Monday morning, 10:30 a.m. for episode 6. We're going to talk about my schooling years, middle school, and I'll see y'all Tuesday morning at 10:30. And we're going to talk about my high school years. And listen, these episodes and what we're going to talk about, things are very, you know, it's going to be a little salacious, maybe a little raunchy. It's you getting to know Mason Jyree. It's you getting to know Mason Jyree. Okay? I love y'all. Listen, keep it sexy, keep it high. It's your boy Mason Jyree. Once again, I want to apologize for the late live. It will never happen again. I love y'all, Lions. Keep it high, keep it spicy, and I'll see y'all very, very soon. And à bon